So the recording is on now, just so everybody knows.
Hey, Dave,
Is everybody ready?
Think Club. Just go in.
Okay. I'm now going to declare the Barrington Zoning Board of Adjustment called to order. As Chair of the Zoning Board of Adjustment, due to the COVID-19 coronavirus crisis and in accordance with Governor Sununu's Emergency Order Number 12 pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this board is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to the meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the Governor's Emergency Order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, this is to confirm that we are utilizing the Microsoft Teams for this electronic meeting. All members of the board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during the meeting through the Microsoft Teams, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in the meeting through the dialing the following number: 1-603-664-0240 and conference ID 54226190, or call 603-664-0330 or email jhuckins@barrington.nh.gov. Or there's a link that says bit.ly//BARRZB 200-715. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting are being done by roll call vote. Now I want to call the attendance. Cheryl Huckins.
Here.
Ray Damaris.
Here.
George Bailey.
Present.
Dave Whitten.
Here.
And Chair Karen Forbes. I think the first item we're going to start with is the item that was continued from September 16th, 2020. Is the applicant present?
Yes, they are.
Okay. And it's Attorney Marr, right?
That's correct.
Attorney Marr, we have a new board member. So you're going to that's Dave, Mr. Whitten. As many times as you've been here and presented it, you're going to have to present it again. Okay?
Sorry. That's quite all right. Thank you for the opportunity. And welcome aboard, Mr. Whitten. So I represent Richard Kelsey. This is an appeal of an administrative decision in accordance with RSA 674-41. So this is somewhat unique from the typical matters that you will hear as a member of the zoning board. What that statute pertains to is the authorization for the issuance of a building permit on a property that does not have frontage on a Class 5 road or better. The subject property is map 261 lot 39, and that is identified colloquially as South Island in Mendham's Pond. I did hear that you do live on Mendham's Pond, so you're familiar generally with the area. The lot itself is 1.64 acres. And if you look at, I'm not sure if you have my packet, if you look at Exhibit A or Exhibit H of the appeal memorandum that I submitted, you'll have Exhibit A is an aerial view of the island itself. On the island, and so you'll see it's shaped like a U almost, or as a comma or apostrophe. And so if you're looking at it, you'll see that on the westerly tip of the island, southwesterly tip of the island is a home. The home, it's a cabin, has historically been used as a 3-season cabin. It's been in existence since the 1940s. There's no land access to the property, so one has to take a boat to access the property. The cabin itself is only 348 square feet. It is composed partially of stone, partially of wood. Within the cabin itself, there's a small area for sleeping, a gas or a propane range, a small fireplace, and historically there's been a basin for effectively carrying in water to wash dishes. And if you look at Exhibit F of what I provided, you'll actually see a picture that shows a portion of the sink, and it's a small kitchen area. Back in 2016, and so what brought this matter to the board was back in 2016, the cabin was substantially vandalized, where vandals broke in, destroyed the door, destroyed a lot of the wood inside, exposed the cabin to the elements for a prolonged period of time, such that the structural wood portions, the wood portions of the structure were jeopardized and exposed the elements and resulting in decay. Mr. Kelsey sought a building permit from Mr. Huckins. Mr. Huckins determined that because this would be a substantial repair or renovation of the building itself, that triggered an erection of a building, which in turn triggered 674-41, which requires this board to hear administrative appeals anytime a building is sought to be erected on a lot that does not have Class 5 or greater frontage. And so the inquiry in this instance is relatively narrow. To obtain the authorization to construct a building, one has to demonstrate that the issuance of the building permit is not going to distort the official map, that it will not increase the difficulty of carrying out the master plan, that there will be no hardship to future purchasers, and that there will be no financial impact to the town. So what Mr. Kelsey is proposing is to effectively repair and renovate the 348 square foot cabin. But as part of that, and it would be Mr. Kelsey's assertion is somewhat irrelevant to these proceedings, he also intends on installing solar panels to the rear of the structure, which would not be visible to the public from the lake. And he would also propose on constructing an accessory structure for the middle of the island, on which would be a composting toilet, as well as a small pump shower / sink. Associated with the pump shower and the sink, Mr. Kelsey would be required to obtain DES approval, install a DES approved wastewater treatment system subsurface, which he has agreed to do, and he's in talks with engineers to do so. With regard to the construction of the septic system, there is sufficient, the layout is sufficient that it would meet all, the construction of a wastewater disposal system would meet all required setbacks. Same with the outhouse. This matter was brought before the board, I want to say it was in May of 2020. The board ultimately voted to authorize the issuance of the building permit, subject to several conditions. One being that it could not be a four-season cabin, had to remain seasonal. That the restrictions on had to be recorded at the Registry of Deeds. That Mr. Kelsey could not install solar panels or a water utility system without further authorization from the board, and he couldn't insulate the cabin. I believe that is all of them, but I may be missing one or two. We moved for rehearing on the basis that we did not believe that the conditions associated with the solar panel, as well as the water, the prohibition of having a water utilities was lawful. And so we've had subsequent, the board voted to grant rehearing. And so that's what brought us here. The solar panels that we're intending to install, there's actually a description of at Exhibit G of what I've supplied. The estimate is that they should not take up more than 30 square feet of the rear. It's going to be 3 to 4 100-watt solar panels. So no more than 300 to 400 watts of power there. They would be installed in accordance with all requirements of the state building and fire code. Mr. Kelsey would use a qualified licensed electrician to install them. And we believe that there's no concerns associated with the solar panels. Members of the board have previously raised concerns about having the solar panels. My understanding from the last meeting, and if I'm wrong, please correct me, was that the concern was having solar panels is going to lead to the installation of a water pump. And if you have a water pump, you're going to have wastewater. And we believe that that concern is adequately addressed by the installation of a DES approved subsurface system, which again, we would obtain. And so in this instance, we believe that Mr. Kelsey meets all the requirements necessary for the issuance of a building permit. Really, it's our position that the pertinent inquiry is really the construction of the building, and that the solar panels and the other utility conditions are. And if one looks solely at the building issues, that the requirements of the statute are met. For one, we don't believe that there's going to be any distortion of the official map. This is a pre-existing cabin. It's existed since the 1940s. There's not an intent of altering the island, nor is there an intent, to my knowledge, to alter the actual footprint of the cabin itself. I will note that historically there was sort of an outhouse to the rear of the property as well. So it's not like having some form of toilet on site it hasn't existed historically. We don't believe that there's going to be any increase or in difficulty in the town carrying out the master plan. The only relevant provisions of the master plan that I could find that this proposal even touched upon are related to concerns of the town related to full-time occupancy on Mendham's Pond, effectively the conversion of what were historically seasonal cottages into year-round residences. However, Mr. Kelsey, aside from he agrees not to use the property as a year-round residence. Beside the fact, the layout of the property, which is only again 348 square feet, and the access issues effectively make it a seasonal property anyways, such that we don't believe that any additional conditions would be necessary to impose a limited occupancy. Further, we don't believe that there's going to be any hardship to future purchasers of property if the building permit would be issued. Again, this is a historic structure. It's existed since the 1940s. Any conditions, Mr. Kelsey would be comfortable with recording those conditions with the Registry of Deeds to put all future purchasers on notice. And so we don't believe that that criteria is going to prohibit the issuance of a building permit. And the last one is that we don't believe that the issuance of the building permit would cause any financial impact to the town. This is not a situation where a new home is being constructed, or that a road needs to be brought up, upgraded, or that a special piece of equipment needs to be purchased by the town in order to facilitate the construction of this property. Again, it's historically it's existed for the past 80 years, give or take. So with that, we would request that the board grant authorize the issuance of the building permit. That authorization come without any prohibition or restriction on the installation of solar panels or water utility system, provided that Mr. Kelsey follows all permitting requirements applicable under the law. And with that, I'll answer what questions the board might have, and I appreciate the board's time.
Yeah, I just want to start by we'll come back to Mr. Whitten's new, and he's new to this case, and we'll come back to the general standard, which is the 4 conditions that you've talked about. But I just want to be clear is that In looking at our prior decision, the structure must remain a seasonal camp. You're not taking issue with that, right?
No, Mr. Kelsey agrees to that.
And what about, we also had no insulation shall be installed.
I don't believe he does not intend on installing insulation, so he's.
Okay. It's just, nor shall electricity, sewer, or water be provided to the structure without further approval of this board. That's the only thing you're objecting to in our prior decision, right?
That is correct.
And that boils down to the solar panels and the shower and the DES system too.
Well, the DES system, I didn't think that the board would have concerns with the DES system, just because, as one of the members had noted at the last meeting, is there's no prohibition on someone going and taking a bath in the lake. And actually, by having a shower with the DES system, you're actually adding a treatment system that wouldn't otherwise exist.
Actually, we had applicant must provide for sanitary sewage disposal on property, for example, a composting toilet. Right.
And
It's the issue of the shower. It's just the issue of the shower and the solar panels.
And the sink / shower, yes.
Okay.
And there's schematic. There is a schematic of where the shower and the sink would be, and that's located at Exhibit H of what I've previously submitted. And
right,
that's going to be located.
And the shower is going to be septic with the toilet, right? It's in a separate building, isn't that what it is?
Yes, it would be. We've been calling it the outhouse, and it's actually identified as such on Exhibit H. That would be separate from the actual cabin itself.
But
and
it's
it
not.
would be.
Is it an outhouse or not?
We just been calling it that. I wouldn't call it. I don't think it's traditionally what I call an outhouse, but it's a separate detached building in which the composting, the shower, and the sink would be located.
And it's larger than what the original outhouse was, right?
I do not know. It's intended to be 6.6 feet 2 inches by 7 feet. I believe it would be larger than what was previously there. I think it was a privy of some kind.
Yeah, I just want to narrow this down to what we're talking about. Okay.
Sure.
So then we're going to go back to the standard since Dave is new to this. And the standard for us to give a building permit in this situation is if the issuance of the permit or erection of the building would not tend to distort the official map, which Barrington doesn't have an official map, right? John? John, are you?
Technically, no.
That is correct.
No, okay. Or increase the difficulty of carrying out the master plan upon which it is based. I don't see how it would affect the master plan at all.
I don't either.
If erection of the building or issuance of the permit will not cause hardship to future purchasers or undue financial impact on the municipality. And the reason that we're here today is because there's no road to this property, therefore we have to go through this process.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. And I don't mean, I'm having trouble seeing, so I don't see people's mouths move. So if I interrupt anybody, I'm sorry. One of the main sort of sticking points Mr. Kelsey does want to raise is if Mr. Kelsey wanted to renovate the cabin and repair the cabin and came before this board, if he wanted to, after the fact, install the solar panels or after the fact install, the sink or the shower, he would not have needed to come before this board again. He would have, all he would have needed was a electrical or a plumbing permit through the building inspector. He would not have needed a variance. It's allowed as a matter of right under the zoning ordinance. So we believe that those sort of considerations are respectfully outside the jurisdiction of the board. I don't know if now is a good time for me to raise my subsequent letter to the board outlining.
Is that the third letter or the fourth letter you submitted?
The most recent one. How about I go by date, which was the October 8th letter.
Yep.
And that was really in response to the last letter, to the last meeting. There was discussion as to 674-41 does authorize the board to impose conditions on approval, much like RSA 674-33 does with regard to variances. And it was really intended to provide the board a background on the limitations on the imposition of conditions for zoning board members, which are that they have to be reasonable, they have to be they cannot be arbitrary, and they have to be ultimately tied to the considerations which are before the board. And because we believe the considerations before the board are really just the construction of the building itself, the renovation of the brick and mortar cabin, that conditions related to solar panel and the sink and the shower are outside the scope of the relief being sought here. And so they would be improper, respectful.
John, is that true that he could have, just for the record, he could have come to you after, if we gave the permit, he could have come to you and asked to construct make an addition on the outhouse or something like that to add the shower?
Yeah, if you read 674-41, it talks about erection of a building. That's the only thing that we have to go through this process for. And the reason why I did this was because Mr. Kelsey's building was basically taken down. So it's probably technically a re-erection, but I just wanted to make sure that I covered my butt because that building portion was being built. But as far as getting plumbing permits, electrical permits and stuff like that, that's not considered erection of a building. So those wouldn't have to go through this process.
Okay.
But he would be erecting a new outhouse as part of this, so that would be an additional to what you're asking for.
But if I
Wait,
may,
one at a time, one at a time.
If I could finish, according to Barrington's regulations, you can build up to a 200 square foot building for an accessory use without a building permit. So there's no building permit required to build that structure.
Attorney Marr, did you want to add anything? Oh, George, you want to ask something?
Yes, I do. I have two items. I was kicked out while Attorney Marr was finishing up. And if with the chair's permission, I would just like to cover one thing that Mr. Marr said. And the fact is that John is responsible for the building permit, but instead of seeking the building permit from John, he is submitting a request from the town to get the building permit, not John Huckins. That's the only there. And then to on renovating the cabin under section on your letter of October 8th, and you on page 2, paragraph 2, about 3/4 of the way down, you listed A, B, C, and D, whether the structure would have undue financial impact to the municipality. One of the questions I would ask with the undue impact to the municipality is providing medical service or fire service, safety services come out there. In order to provide that, does the town own a boat or other transportation necessary to get them out there? So if not, then it would be an undue hardship, in my opinion, on the town to have that equipment available to provide your client with that safety usage.
If I may respond to that, is typically in those sort of situations, what you do is it's no different than if you have seeking a building permit for construction of a house on a Class 6 road. You may have difficulty getting an ambulance or a fire truck down there. In those instances, property owners routinely provide a waiver of liability to the town to allow for that. Actually, 674-51 envisions that it's a routine requirement, and we would give one here. We understand, and we're not expecting the town to obtain or purchase a fireboat in order to access this structure. Again, it's been there since 1940. The other piece of it is that the erection of solar panels would actually facilitate greater fire safety measures that aren't there right now. And so we believe that this is consistent. It makes the property safer, and we would be more than happy to provide a waiver of liability, which is routine in these instances.
Attorney Marr, the only reason I brought that up is that was something that you had sent to ZBA, us here, and that's the reason why I brought it up. I'm glad you brought up the rest of it, but that's the impact, and I'm not implying to be a stupid request. It's just a request that I made to everybody's attention that was there, and you're volunteering to put that statement in there would help. Thank you.
Can I speak?
Yep.
Okay. Been thinking about this. This man, Mr. Kelsey, owns the house on the island, which is existing. So as far as the safety, can we get ambulance and fire truck out there? It's just like someone else said, it's the same as with the houses on the private roads. It's going to, maybe, but also Mr. Kelsey, as far as access goes, if I remember correctly, he bought a piece of land from which he can launch his boat to and from his island. And that owning that piece of land also gives him a right to use McDaniel's Shore Drive. So I think his access is taken care of by that purchase of the land. His house was badly vandalized, and he wants to renovate it and fix the destruction, which of course we should allow him to do, because there's nothing unreasonable about wanting to fix your damaged home or your damaged cabin. And as far as the other stuff goes, I mean, he's not expanding it, and he's putting in the composting toilet in the outhouse, which is not really a typical outhouse. It's a new age outhouse, I would call it. And that doesn't require a building permit. That's all. The toilet's going to be all installed through DES regulations. And as far as the solar goes, I've been thinking about that. And we have plenty of seasonal cabins in this town that have electricity, and they have running water and solar panels. So in my mind, to the way I think, it would be very prejudicial to not allow Mr. Kelsey to put some solar panels on his summer home. And I think that as a board, we overstepped our bounds when we put that condition. I don't think we have a right to put that condition on this man. Not what we've allowed everyone else to do.
Dave has his hand up. Dave?
Dave?
You have your
Thank
hand
you.
up.
I have two questions. One is, do we know that the fire department does not have a boat? I'm not sure if they do or not.
They do have a boat.
So, I mean, he could provide access to his island through his shoreline-owned access for the fire department to do that.
Mhm.
And the other concern that I have, and somewhat related to that, and it might not be applicable to this discussion, is that the Marine Patrol doesn't have access to this lake right now either. So maybe there's an opportunity there for them, even though the state owns a dam, then they don't allow the Marine Patrol to access this lake. So we have had no police force on this lake per se for the last 3 or 4 years. The other question I have that I think Eric can answer is the shower and the toilet all in the same building?
Yes. If you look at the schematic, I'm not sure if you have it. And I apologize if I'm constantly moving around because my computer's acting funny and it's making it difficult for me I have to use my phone to to access the hearing, but I'm looking at my computer to access my documents. It would be in the same building. And so what it is you're going to have the composting toilet with a small basin it's going to be water pumped from the lake, which would be connected to the subsurface system. And then you would have a shower adjacent to that in the same structure, which again would be connected to the subsurface disposal system.
Oh, so he'll be pumping water into the shower and using the composting toilet in the same structure with one vent pipe, it looks like.
I believe that is correct, yes.
See, my biggest concern, and I'll just voice that right now, is obviously pumping water out of the lake, and I'm sure that there's nothing to stop him from doing that at this time. I mean, he can use a bucket or a battery-powered pump, and nobody's going to be able to control that. is my concern, of course, is the waste and by following the DES requirements for disposal of that waste and having a system designed and on that property would satisfy that.
Yes, and that's the intent. DES will not allow, even if it's pumped directly from the lake, if there is a pumping system to allow for running water, DES requires a subsurface disposal system.
Okay,
And so,
thanks.
so we would be in violation of New Hampshire law if we did not get one.
Okay, so just in closure of my question, maybe if he would be interested in having it noted that the town has access to the lake through his property for purposes of fire and safety, and maybe include the state of New Hampshire with that.
I would have to speak to him about that. That's a fairly big ask. And if it's to allow folks, it's to allow for emergency access to his property, I'm sure he wouldn't have a problem with it. It's really allowing anybody with affiliation to the state of New Hampshire the ability to access the lake through his property. It's effectively granting a permanent easement to the good of the public. So I would have to speak to him about that. I don't think he would have a problem at all to allowing the town or the Marine Patrol to access his property and launch a boat to access his property in the event of an emergency.
Yeah, that's what
In case of an emergency, they have a right to get to the water through anybody's property, no different than any other emergency thing that happens at any time in town. So
Okay.
the nearest connection to that water, when they go down the road, that's what they're gonna use.
Okay, so that completely answers my concern. So, thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Hawkins.
Ray, did you want to say something?
Yeah, so this is everybody's talking about Class 6 roads. This is an island, very sensitive environmental island. And my concern has always been pumping water and disposing of the water on this island. So, I mean, I'm fine with your plan. I'm just not sure it's gonna work. How are you gonna get a disposal system on this island built? You can't get heavy equipment out there. How is this thing gonna be constructed that is gonna be safe for the lake? Again, I'm not opposed to it. I just want to know how it's going to be done. So would you be opposed to taking your plan to the Conservation Commission, getting their approval? If they say, yes, this is fine, I'd be happy with that.
I really, at this point in time, we've had so many hearings on this. I'm reluctant to present this to another board. I mean, and the Conservation Commission is typically an advisory body anyways.
Correct.
And ultimately, if DES is going to require what DES is going to require, and at that point in time, it's going to be Mr. Kelsey's problem to ensure that it's executed. There's going to have to be inspections. There's going to have to be sign-offs. There's going to have to be assurances by both the town and DES that matters are being constructed adequately. And so in terms of getting, in terms of the actual nature of the subsurface system, that's something that Mr. Kelsey is still discussing with an engineer to figure out.
Part of what he's trying to do is, because of having the composting toilet, really all he's doing is a gray water system. So it's not like a total leach field like you would think of for a house and domestic stuff. This is just something to filter wash water before it goes back to the lake. So it's not really a true septic system, because you're not containing pathogens and all the other stuff. The toilet's a composting toilet that handles that.
And if I may also,
Can I
if
speak?
I may,
This is Richard Kelsey.
Richard, if I could say something very quickly, it's Eric. This is a 1.64 acre parcel. There are plenty of parcels around Mendham's Pond that are far smaller than 1.64 acres, and that probably have septic systems that are far closer to Mendham's Pond than what would be located here. This is the parcel that is, the septic system has, the lot itself has ample space to accommodate a septic system, both in accordance with the shoreline protection provisions of the zoning ordinance, as well as the shoreline protection provisions that exist under New Hampshire law. Richard, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Please.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say a couple of things. That there are contractors that put septic systems on islands. I've been talking to one of them. They have all the equipment they need to do when they have, they can get it out there and they can get the job done. That's thing one. Thing two, for people in general, New Hampshire does not recognize gray water systems legally. So, no, it has to be a full septic system, full in-ground system, because that's all that the state recognizes.
Okay. In any case, I think it's much safer and better for the environment than an outhouse, which was there before.
Okay, is there anybody else to speak in favor? Anybody to speak in opposition on this request? Any more questions from the board?
I have one question, Madam Chair.
Yep.
When was the other building erected?
Richard, do you mean the privy that's been historically used?
The utility shed.
Richard, do you?
I don't know. It was. I mean, there's no permitting. There's no record of it. It was there, but I don't know when it was put up.
You mean the original outhouse, George?
No, I'm talking about the utility one that was built. The 6.3 by whatever it is there.
I don't think that has been built, George.
That is what he's proposing to build when he gets his permit. Not there.
Yes,
No.
yes. The 6 foot by 2 inch by 7 foot structure that's at Exhibit H, Mr. Bailey.
That's the one I'm referring to. Yes, sir. That's correct. Thank you, Attorney.
Yes, that has not yet been constructed. That's what he's proposing to construct effectively in the middle or the thickest part of the island.
Thank
So
you.
is that could be adjusted based on what DES comes back with for their system design and permitting,
In terms
right?
of, in terms of
I
exact
would like-
location?
I would like to remind the board that going back to October of 13, when we had the request to have a well put into a particular area, and then several years later, a well was erected and the planning board noted that that well was considered a structure. So if that's the case from back then, what's to say that this piece that he's putting on there now is another structure? I mean, I'm confused with that, Madam Chair.
So, well, let me put it to you this way. First of all, that neither one of those cases has precedential value for us.
All right.
Secondly,
I'm sorry I brought it up.
we're the deciders of the interpretation of the zoning ordinance. So the planning board can say whatever it wants as a structure, but if there's an appeal, it comes to the ZBA. So.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was not trying to confuse anybody. I was just looking at this in a different matter to what everybody else was saying.
I agree. We do try to be consistent, but each one of these cases is so fact specific, it's really hard to be.
Yes, ma'am.
So is there anybody else here to speak in opposition? No? Any other questions from the board? Okay, hearing none, we will close the public testimony portion of the meeting and the board will discuss. Let's start first of all with the standard for granting a building permit under 674-41. And just to remind people that we did grant this previously, it's just the issue of the conditions. So the first one is whether the structure would distort the official map. Everybody's in agreement it wouldn't because we don't have an official map. B, whether the structure would increase the difficulty of carrying out the master plan.
No.
Everybody know?
Yeah, no, that would not.
C, whether the structure would cause hardship to future owners.
I don't see how.
I don't see how it would either. Anybody else? No more than any other house.
No.
Okay. D, whether the structure would have undue financial impact to the municipality. And I guess I understand what George was raising about getting out there, but I think that's the problem with any structure on an island,
Mhm.
on a class 6 road. And I think part of the solution, which we're never totally happy with, is the waiver of liability.
We're also going to be able to tax a usable summer home, 3-season home, which previous to this we couldn't because it was a ramshackle, rundown, and then vandalized.
That's not part of our consideration, is it, Madam Chair?
No, not really, but
Thank you.
whether it's a financial hardship to the impact to the town. I don't, anybody thoughts on, to the contrary, that it has an undue financial impact?
No.
As Attorney Marr had stated earlier, he used Class 6 roads and private roads, and this is totally different. I don't think an island has a road, so that's just, it's the idea of getting there, then asking for the liability waiver for it's, you and I know, Madam Chair, a good attorney can turn around and beat that in the ground and have it the town's fault, so.
Yeah, well, we do it
I understand.
now.
I will say,
I'm sorry, point of order?
Yeah. He knows.
Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Marr. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, so I don't know if you want to start discussing how we want to handle this, if we want to vote on. I think, are most people in favor of granting the building permits? And just a matter of deciding on what the conditions are.
Yeah.
I am.
George, are you in favor of it?
I have no problem with it. It's just the conditions that go with it.
Okay.
And,
So let's go back over our old conditions. So we're going to grant the building permit. The question is, what are the conditions? In the last time, the first one was the structure must remain a seasonal camp and no insulation shall be installed. Everybody's in agreement that that should remain. Okay. Number 2, and I'm going to skip over the part on electricity and sewer or water for now. 2, applicant must provide for sanitary sewage disposal at the property. For example, a composting toilet, and I think I would add as approved by DES. Okay.
That
I would
sounds,
agree.
Then we had the decision shall be recorded at the Stratford County Registry of Deeds, correct? And the last one I would add is that the applicant shall execute a waiver of liability.
okay.
Everybody's in agreement, okay? So the question becomes the solar panels and the shower. I just want to say, I'll go first unless somebody else wants to go. I think you know where I stand. I think I don't have any problem with either one of them. I think that the restrictions where you limit whether or not you could put solar panels and showers are not reasonably related to the thing that's being requested. I think that there's a major problem if he could get the building permit from us and then later on and come get an approval from John because it falls outside of our scope of authority. So I think that I'm ready to approve it without any restrictions on solar panels or the shower.
Me too.
George wants to talk? Okay.
yes, please. My concern is the capacity of the composting toilet going to be able to take care of the gray water that it needs to facilitate? Or is he going to have to put a bigger system in that DES requires, which is outside our scope, to ensure that we don't have any infiltration of nitrates and what have you into the lake?
You are right that this is in DES's purview, not ours.
No, I don't agree. I think it's DES and conservation here. I mean, this is a sensitive environmental island on Mendham's Pond. I think it's both. It's DES and it's our conservation land here as far as keeping things safe and clean. So
In 2004 or 5, under the auspices of the Conservation Commission and Mr. Wallace at the time that was chair, there was with UNH, they went around the island and they took the phosphate readings and what have you and showed that some of the areas didn't acquire, but I'm not bringing that up. What I'm saying now is that's why my concern is the phosphate's going to leak out of this, or is the system going to be able to handle it so we don't contaminate the lake?
Which is why I asked for the Conservation Commission to look at their plans.
I understand that, Ray. I really do. But
I'm sorry, but I have to disagree. If
Me
DES
too.
gives you a permit, it trumps everything. Trumps
Agree.
whatever the Conservation Commission says. They're the experts. They do the state licensing. They decide these things.
It's their field.
Dave, you have your hand up?
Yeah. So I'm confused. If we're putting in it's a gray water system, or in this case, the DES says that there's no such thing, so they're putting in a septic system to handle the shower. I don't believe, and I could be mistaken, that the composting toilet feeds into that. It's a separate system. The composting toilet doesn't have anything to do with the gray water system in the shower. So the shower is only being used, feeding the gray water system. And I'm assuming that there's going to be a sink in the cabin that'll also feed that.
Mhm.
Am I right?
Yeah, you're right.
Dave,
Okay, so-
that composting toilet will have a powder that it takes with it, so that's it.
Yeah, so that won't be feeding the gray water system, so I'm not too concerned about the gray water system, especially given the fact that the DES approved system is going to be installed. To me, that's going to be a more environmentally safe setup than what ultimately could be there and what is probably there now. If people are
Absolutely.
using a pail to pull water out of the lake and dumping it in the sink and then draining it back onto the ground, that's just going to run back into the lake. And that, to me, is an environmental sensitivity over and above a DES approved septic system.
Agreed.
Ray, did you want to say something?
Nope, I'm done.
Okay. So we want to add something about the gray water system being approved by DES too. I don't think we need to, do we, John? Is DES gonna,
The requirement from DES, if you pump water, you have to have a disposal system. That's where that kicks in.
and it
So
has to
once
be,
they install a pump, they have to have a system approved by DES.
how about if we added any water system or water disposal system shall be approved by DES?
Correct. Because the water system, they're just planning on drawing out of the lake. They're not trying to create potable water like you would have for a dwelling unit. They're still using this as like a recreational camp where the water is not considered potable for drinking and stuff. It's just for bathing and cleaning.
All right, so what I have is, number one, the structure must remain a seasonal camp. Installation shall be installed. Number two, applicant must provide for sanitary sewage disposal at the property. For example, a composting toilet as approved by DES. Any water system / disposal system shall be approved by DES. 3, the disposal shall be recorded at the Stratford County Registry of Deeds. And 4, the applicant shall execute a waiver of liability.
Sounds good.
That waiver of liability should also be recorded in the Registry of Deeds, just like you would do on a Class 6 and private road.
All right, be recorded at the Registry of Deeds. You have to march when I'm ready?
I also have the recording so I can really get.
All right. So is there anybody who wants to make a motion?
Make a motion that we granting a waiver here,
For the building permit?
the building permit, based on what you have written down, Karen.
Subject to the conditions I just read.
Yes.
Okay.
Subject to the conditions Karen just read.
Is there a second? Are you talking, Dave? You're on mute.
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor, I'm going to call a roll call vote. Okay.
Further
Dave.
discussion?
Oh, do you want discussion? Yep.
I do. My discussion is, I understand what we're doing. I understand the difficulty we're putting the client or the requester individual in. And I just think that we've gone far and wide, and I just hope that in the end that the individual will be respectful of what we request. Thank you.
Thank you, George. back to anybody else for discussion? Nope.
No, I agree with George.
Okay. Dave Whitten, how do you vote?
Aye.
George Bailey?
Aye.
Cheryl
Aye.
Huckins?
Aye.
Ray Damaris?
Aye.
Karen Forbes, aye. So it's been granted, subject to those conditions.
Thank you very much, all, for your extensive amount of time you've given us. I appreciate it, and I hope you have a great night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Okay. The next case is Ballestero.
Mhm.
Is the applicant present? And this is case number 116-5-GR-20- Thomas Ballestero, is the applicant on?
Yes, I called in. I don't have a video camera on my computer.
Oh, okay, good. Can you just speak up? Well, maybe I'll turn the volume up. Okay,
Okay, is that any better?
that's good. Yep.
Okay.
We're ready. I think everybody's ready, Mr. Ballestero, if you want to explain what you're doing.
Absolutely. My wife and I purchased this home at 26 Big Rock Lane last October. And based on the inspection report, it was pretty evident that we either needed to invest a lot in rebuilding what was there or tear it down and start over. So last January, I met with Mr. Huckins at the site. We chatted about options and what we had in mind. And I think after my chat with him, my wife and I decided that we would try to demolish the structure and basically build another structure in almost the same footprint. The existing structure was built in the 1950s. It was added on to 1 or 2 times. And so it has a fairly irregular footprint. What we're planning on doing is putting in a fairly simple rectangular foundation and then sitting a modular structure on top of it. In the end,
Mr. Ballestero, can I just interject? Is the outline, the gray stuff, the outline, the shaded part where the building used to be?
yes, that was a request of the town. The light shading is the existing structure outside of what is proposed. And the dark lines are the proposed structure. There's a deck on the outside and and then there's also the dark crosshatched is where the proposed structure is outside of the existing and in the setback.
Okay, okay.
So we rotated the house a little bit. It kind of matches the other houses on the road. And we're reducing the area of nonconformance by about 155 square feet. We're reducing the total footprint compared to the existing footprint by a little over 200 square feet. We've already got the shoreland permit from the state. We got that last, I think, June. And we have a demolition permit. The site has an existing septic system that was approved and constructed in 2007. It's a high-end septic system, so it's a 3-tank system to remove nutrients in particular. The original house that's existing is 2-bedroom, and the proposed house is also to be a 2-bedroom. We plan to use it as a seasonal vacation home. We reside in Madbury, and it's just convenient to go there overnight or just for the weekend. So what I'm looking for right now is a non-conforming lot. I understand that anything I do on a non-conforming lot has to go before your board. And so I'm just asking for approval of the proposed plans so that we can get a building permit and start construction.
Okay, just to go over it, so it looks like, so we don't know what the existing building was from the, what it was before.
If you allow me to share my screen, I can show you.
Yeah, I know, but we don't have the distance. It looks like the front setback is going to be more than it was previously. It doesn't tell you.
I believe the yellow highlights are the proposed and the darker ones are existing.
Okay.
The ones without the highlight.
Okay, are there any questions from the board members?
Madam Chair?
Yeah, George?
Thank you very much. I looked at that and the question is only about right around a foot difference from the setback from the original to the new, and the other setback seems to increase on the side. So, I mean, the setbacks and the way it's laid out and everything else, I have no other questions but just a statement to say that I would process this.
Anybody else? Any other questions? Right?
No,
Great.
it looks good. Looks good to me.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't have a problem here.
No, me neither.
So is there anybody else to speak in favor? In the public? Anybody in the public to speak in opposition?
Hello?
Hello, is there somebody?
Yeah. Yeah, this is Aubrey Mead. I'm the neighbor next door.
Yeah.
And I just want to say that my wife and I are in full support of this application. We did submit a letter to that effect for the record, but just wanted to take the just say we're all for it.
Okay. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Was there any comment from the abutter on the other side, Stanley?
Stanley Bodak, this is me right now. Just going. Can you hear me? Hello? Hello, this is Stanley. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I can hear you, Stan.
Barely, yep.
I'm in full support of it. I have no issues with it.
Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else? Hearing none, we'll close the public testimony portion of the meeting and the board will discuss it. Do you want to repeat what you said before or we'll just go with it?
I think this is
Go with
pretty
it.
reasonable. They try to,
I'm
as
good.
best they could to make it fit to the
Yeah.
law. I
Yeah.
agree.
Actually, good job.
I think they did an excellent job of trying to stay within.
I make a motion, we grant the variance?
I'll
I'll
second
second.
it.
Okay.
Okay, Ray, how do you vote?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Cheryl?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
And I vote yes. Mr. Ballester, your request for variances have been granted, and there's several variances because there's several, whatever, setback variances. All right, our last case of the night.
I'd like to thank the board. I know it's all volunteer time to sit on boards myself, and I really appreciate the time you've given to me and everybody else who comes before you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to call the next case, which is Linda Kyring, and it's case number 116-16-GR-20, request for variance. Is the applicant present?
Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
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 Who's speaking?
Hey,
This is
we
Ray,
see.
Stonewall
We
Survey.
hear
Can you
you.
hear me?
Go ahead, Ray.
For some reason, all of a sudden I lost my hearing, my speaker. All right, I'll try to go through. I'm gonna have might have a little bit of an echo. Hopefully it doesn't. I'm not sure why I can't hear you. You can hear me though, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
My name is Ray Bisson from Stonewall Survey, and I'm representing Linda Tyring at 462 Young Road in Barrington. The property is 1.97 acres. It is in the general residential and the wetland protection overlay district. The subject parcel in right-of-way was sold from Eugene Sullivan to Olive and Marion Peabody in 1958. Eugene Sullivan was also the abutting parcel at the time. Linda Tyring purchased the property in 1998. The existing right-of-way is only about 10 feet in width when it exits Young Road and becomes a variable in width along Linda's property. At the widest point, the right-of-way is just under 24 feet in width. The right-of-way cannot be widened unless acquiring additional land or granted a right-of-way from the abutting property. The fee of the right-of-way is owned by Min Young and Young Jia Lee, which is tax map 116 lot 21. That's upper left-hand corner of the plan as you're looking at it currently. The code requirements and definitions for the lot frontage is the side of a parcel used to satisfy the frontage requirement specified in the table of dimension standards or other alternative standards. Must be the side of the parcel used to provide vehicular access to the property, which currently they come off of Young Road with their paved driveway. Article 18, a corner lot. A lot at the point of intersection of and abutting on two or more intersecting streets. Each street frontage shall be considered a front yard. So Article 18, street, is a road, thoroughway, or that affords the means of access to adjacent lots and is devoted to vehicle travel. And it includes any street, avenue, road, lane, viaduct, boulevard, alley, highway, or other way, whether public or private. And that's basically the issue that we're going to have tonight. So my client wishes to build a one-car garage being 18 foot by 24 feet at the end of the existing paved drive. This is in the general location of the former barn. That the squared off portion of that retaining wall is actually part of the old barn. The angled portion is more of a retaining wall that was kind of done after the fact. The corner lot requirement makes both the right-of-way and Young Road to require the front yard setback to be 40 feet in width. This pushes the garage in front of the house, which would block the view of Swains Lake and devalue the house, or put into the rear of the property, which doesn't make for convenient and safe location for everyday use, especially in the winter months. The terrain of the property also has an impact, and there is some exposed ledge towards the rear of the property. The surrounding area. The adjacent properties are residential lots or open space. The right-of-way currently only services the subject parcel and tax map 116 lot 17, which is to the left of the property as you're looking at it. Tax map 116 lots 19 and 21 are current wood lots that also basically have the right to use that right-of-way. Across Young Road is Swains Lake, and the parcel also sits on the cove of Swains Lake. The existing right-of-way has very poor visibility to the left coming onto Young Road. I actually submitted a photo in the application pertaining to the exit of that right-of-way. This creates a hazard, and my client does not want to use that right-of-way for everyday use. Which meaning that, okay, she parks her car in a garage, she doesn't want to be going in and out of that every single day. So you can see actually right there, if you scroll down just a little bit. No, other way. Whoop. There should be, yeah, there we go. So you can see right there, I'm actually parked basically ready to come out of the right-of-way itself. And you can just barely see that car coming around the corner. Mm-hmm. And the next photo is the exit of her paved driveway. And basically you can see there's much more. Always fun the scrolling of these things. So you can basically see that she has much better visibility. You can see I actually started the stump, so you kind of had a point of reference of the same in both those photos. The existing paved driveway on the subject lot is accessed directly onto Young Road, which qualifies as the lot frontage per code Article 4.1.2. This access point is a much safer access onto Young Road, therefore my client wishes to continue this access. The reasons for the special exception. As stated previously, the required front yard is 40 feet. We are asking for the setback to be reduced to the regulation side setback of 30 feet. This reduction will not create any encumbrances, hazards, have a negative impact of abutting parcels, and would do substantial justice in this matter. That's, I guess, in my short of it. Any particular questions?
So the only variance we're looking for is to reduce from 40 to 30, and we have a 40 because it's a corner lot because of the right of way. Got it?
Yes.
Yes, that's it.
Okay. I just want to be clear. Any questions from the board?
What's the width of the right of way? I can't see it on here.
I'm sorry, what's that?
What's the width of the right of way?
The right of way when basically right against Young Road is 10 feet wide.
Okay.
Then it's 10 feet wide until it kind of goes by the barn. And in the old deed, when you read the original deed, it actually kind of came down to the barn, then went around the barn, and then went to the road. So in that portion, it's only 10 feet wide. So basically, it's just a driveway at that point.
So the 30-foot dimension that you have here is to the existing, that solid line?
The dimensions go to the blue line.
Yeah,
which
okay.
is that's the property line.
That's the, okay, got it.
Any other questions? Anybody here to speak in favor? Anybody here to speak in opposition? Hearing none, we'll close the public testimony portion of the meeting and the board will discuss. Any thoughts, anyone?
I don't see any problems here. I mean, this is,
No,
yeah.
me
I mean, well, the frontage is on Young Road, so I don't see any issues.
Yep, me either. George?
Make a motion.
Sure, make a motion.
Make a motion to accept case number 116-16-GB-20 with variance.
Ms. Brandon, is there a second?
I second.
All right.
Quick around here.
Dave?
Aye.
Cheryl?
Aye.
Ray?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
And Karen Forbes? Aye. So your request for a variance has been granted.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Has anybody had a chance to review the minutes? George?
I have, and I would make a motion to accept them as read.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Dave, how do you vote? Oh, you don't need to vote because you weren't here. Cheryl?
Aye.
Ray?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
And I vote yes. Any new business?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Aye.
Second.
Okay, Dave?
Aye.
Cheryl?
Aye.
Ray?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
And I vote yes.
Okay. Good night.
Thanks,
Good night,
everybody.
everyone.
Good night, everyone. Have a safe week,
No.
safe month.
Have a good vacation, George.
I'm not going